Hey everyone, it's Unishek here, and today we're bringing you another Ask343 video about Halo Infinite. In this episode, we've got 4 members of the Halo Infinite team joining us to talk about our latest Inside Infinite blog. Before we dive into your questions, I'll let each of them introduce themselves and tell you about their role on Halo Infinite.
Yeah, thanks, John. My name is Quinn DelHoyo, and I'm the lead Sandbox designer over here on Halo Infinite. And what that means is I'm just responsible for overseeing the direction on all of the weapons, vehicles, abilities, equipment, items, all that kind of stuff, all the toys that the player interacts with.
My name's John Mulkey. I'm the lead world designer, which means I run the team that gets the fun of bringing all the pieces together to create the world you're going to explore in Halo Infinite. So sort of running the team where all the rubber hits the road. All the efforts of everybody comes together with us, making sure we're making it shine.
My name is Troy Mashburn. I am the gameplay director on Halo Infinite. So essentially in charge of gameplay across the entire campaign experience.
I'm the campaign art lead for Halo Infinite. So a lot of my job revolves around kind of ensuring the art quality on the campaign is going well and looking awesome for both the fans and people who are making the game.
Awesome. It's great to have you here today. We're going to be answering a few community questions today. So our first question from Twitter is, the dynamic day-night cycles look fantastic. Can we also expect some degree of dynamic weather?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of our job on the art team and the graphics team was to make the ring feel alive, right? And so a big part of kind of a living ecosystem is weather, at least on our planet, and we want to emulate that on the ring. So we've definitely added things like there's a really cool wind system, which is not just visual, but also audio. We have fog systems, you could call them, that come in to different altitudes and different times of day. We didn't go down the road of having rainstorms and thunderstorms and snowstorms and things like that for our launch this year. But we're really excited about the future and what that might mean for things like that. Gotcha.
And yeah, day and night is super cool. So yeah, we're looking forward to getting more hands-on with all of that. The day-night cycle in Infinite looks and sounds amazing. Is time of day going to affect how enemies respond to your presence or change types, groups, numbers of enemies depending on what time it is?
So when you're moving through the world in the darker periods, you're going to end up seeing more patrols of phantoms, moving through the space with searchlights and that kind of thing, which is pretty cool. And it like adds kind of an eerie element to what's going on around you. You'll probably run into more opportunities where grunts are sleeping on the job, get the drop on some enemies that way. And then we've done some things to try to kind of emphasize, honestly, just like cool things that would look good in the dark spaces. So we're going with things that have like more emissives on them and that kind of thing. So you'll run into like shield jackals and that kind of thing, because when they put the shields on, it looks really cool, in the dark. And honestly, it's simply because it just looks really cool and it's really fun to fight those in that kind of environment. We put more coils in place and stuff like that because they glow and have really cool effects in the darker spaces. Enemies with personal shields, that kind of stuff. Those are the kinds of things you'll see as you're going through the darker areas when it's in the nighttime cycles.
That is awesome to hear. I actually didn't know about a few of those things that you called out. So looking forward to going back and playing, especially at night, so I can experience some of that for myself. Our next question is actually going to be about wildlife. Wildlife was confirmed in the last Inside Infinite update. What kinds of wildlife can we expect to see? And will all the wildlife be friendly, or will there be some that are hostile to the player and to enemies?
So yeah, we will be having wildlife in the environment. We don't have any hostile wildlife in the environment. We wanted to focus the idea on the battle between the Banished and the UNSC forces, Chief, pushing back against that. So we didn't want to bring in the idea that you're fighting the ambient population of the ring. But we do have them as an element that really brings the ring to life. I think people have seen the Space Gophers. I don't know what the franchise name is that we've gone with those yet, but we call them Space Gophers lovingly within the studio. Everybody wants plushies of them, which is nice. We have some bird bird kind of creatures that are flying around and stuff like that. Some of those will actually draw attention to locations. If you see birds like circling up in the air, you might go, "Oh, what's over there? We can check that out." That's pretty cool. And something that I missed when we talked about day-night cycle, some of the wildlife that we have like a bioluminescence kind of quality to them. And so in the night cycles, you'll see some of those come out and be more prevalent, which looks really cool in the darker spaces too.
Wow, I'm learning quite a bit today too. So that's very exciting to hear. And I'm sure the community is going to love all of that when they get to go hands-on with it too. I'm going to keep us moving on over to our next question though. This one is there a plan to bring back dual wielding in Halo Infinite?
Currently, no, that's not in the cards right now. And just to get into that a little bit is whenever you set out to make a game the size of Halo Infinite, there's just so many things you can do. I think we have a very talented team where we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And so we wanted to really focus down on the weapon, the gunplay, grenades, melee, and where we wanted to put that bet this time was on equipment, bringing equipment back. And so right now, dual wielding isn't necessarily there, but that's because we're trying to focus on everything, on all the other things that we're working on.
Gotcha. So it's more to just keep the team focused and make sure the stuff that is there is fantastic.
That's right. Yeah. Focus on what we have. Yeah, totally.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I'm going to keep us moving along to our next question here. Will there be playable elites in Halo Infinite?
Got it. Okay. That's another big question. You know, similar to the last answer, no, we're not currently planning on supporting elites as a playable character in Infinite. And the reason is, you know, this is a Master Chief story and a Spartan story, especially in multiplayer. We want to make sure that we focus on how Spartans battle against each other and that it feels fair and it's competitive, it's balanced. And, you know, we love elites, but never say never. Maybe we'll see that one day, but right now the current plan is you're going to be playing Spartans.
Gotcha. Thank you for diving into that a little bit deeper and giving us that explanation there. Our next question, will there be weapon upgrades in the campaign?
I'll say early on we toyed around with that idea of adding weapon upgrades into the game, being able to, you know, customize your weapons. And this started leading us down the road of, well, you have customized weapons, you're going to want an expanded inventory. And we started really heading down this rabbit hole. And they're all features that we liked and we thought were really cool. But the game started to veer away from what we felt like Halo was all about. And we decided instead to take a different avenue. So there are things in the game that you can progress. We hinted a little bit earlier about equipment items that you're going to be able to unlock as you progress through the game, and you'll be able to upgrade these to improve their capabilities as you go, and you're also going to be able to find and unlock some cool weapon variants, which is really exciting as you're getting into these encounters and finding new weapons.
Awesome. That sounds super cool and gives you players something to explore throughout the ring and a chance to upgrade equipment. Our next question, you all mentioned being able to hold multiple pieces of equipment in campaign. They're referring to our latest Inside Infinite blog. Does this ability also appear in multiplayer, or is that strictly for campaign?
The current plan and thinking is that for the base multiplayer experience, that you need to be able to find and scavenge the equipment that you find, and you can only hold them one at a time, and you use it and it's gone, and you need to find another one. That being said, we are putting plans in place to allow players to customize the game via custom game options, like Halo's Legacy, where you can be able to hold multiple equipment in the multiplayer custom game that you're creating. So that is the current plan, and we'll see if we could make that happen.
Gotcha. That's great news and very exciting, getting to use all the toys in a single match. So thank you for that. I'm going to take us on over to our next question. Is the game going to be open world or semi-open world?
I think that when you talk about open world or semi-open world, there's a lot of preconceived ideas of what that means? Are you going to be out there, gathering leather and crafting and those sorts of things? And that's not what we're about. We were inspired very early on from missions like Silent Cartographer from Halo Combat Evolved. And this mission, one of the things that really stuck with me is how open it was, how much player freedom, player choice you had to decide where you want to go, when to engage. It has, you can go inside, you can go outside, you're driving on your Warthog, you're with Marines. So we wanted to, when we talk about rebooting, or the spiritual reboot of the franchise, we wanted to capture the essence of this feeling of player choice. And so I think when we talk about world size, it's good to understand how we got to the size of the world that we have. Now, if you think about missions, in game, like in Halo 5, there's on Meridian, there's a mission where you're driving a Scorpion up a road, and it's cool. The space is designed for the Scorpion. And once you complete that mission, you leave the Scorpion behind and you go on to the next mission. Well, what we started asking ourselves is, what if you could keep that Scorpion? What if you could drive that Scorpion to the next mission and use it again? And then we started taking that further. What if instead of going through the front gate of that mission, you can drive that Scorpion up on the hill around the backside and, blow up that Wraith that's parked there before the enemy even knows you're around? And this really struck a chord with us, where that's what that experience that we felt in Silent Cartographer really was about. It was about giving me a bunch of toys to play with, putting me in this world where I can choose how and when and where I want to use those toys, and approaching the situation how I like. And so going back to the world size, we expanded the world to account for this kind of combat, to account for Halo combat. So we have bases that are open. There's a road leading up to the base, but there's also the hillside. And you can follow that road down to another base behind the mountain, but it's all still, it's Halo combat. It's not trying to be anything else. And that's what's really exciting to us. It's that expansive combat area that you really felt like you had in Silent Cartographer, realized now with the cool next generation consoles.
That's awesome. And I always enjoy playing the game in campaign, whether I want to roll up with a tank like you mentioned, or start picking people off from afar, or even just go in guns blazing. It's always a ton of fun. Our next question from the community is, I know that exploration is a major focus of Infinite, but what I'm curious about is biomes. What sort of environments, if any, can we expect on Zeta Halo aside from the Pacific Northwest inspired landscapes we've seen so far?
Yeah, another great question. So like I said in the blog, we really focused on the legacy aspect of the game for the visuals. So Pacific Northwest is our main biome. That was by choice. We got really excited about it. We wanted to do it right. And so within that biome, you actually find diversity within sub-biomes. So we have some high altitude palettes. We have some more wetland palettes, more swampy wetlands. We also have some war-torn areas. We refer to those as the Deadlands, where you can really see some storytelling going on with the biome itself and maybe what happened on the ring. Along with our biomes, we have a lot of other palettes, right? We have the hexagons themselves lead to some really interesting kind of visual and gameplay situations of having, a cavern made out of hexagons. Or speaking of caves, we actually have cave systems in the game as well. So you can go exploring in some really dark, kind of moody areas and see what you can discover. We have the Forerunner architecture. You go inside the Forerunner with that classic palette. And then the Banished themselves bring this plethora of really interesting architecture and buildings and fortifications. And so when we put all these things together, it adds a lot of variety in a very natural way, I'll say. So it doesn't feel like you're at Disneyland where you're running around and you're seeing these very intricate new biomes that don't really mesh well together. So we really focused on getting that Pacific Northwest biome and then having these sub-biomes within it, so it all feels like one believable place for the player to kind of engage with.
Gotcha. So like a diversification of that Pacific Northwest biome, right?
Yeah.
Just a whole bunch of stuff inside it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of variety within it, yes. But it is all kind of contained in that Pacific Northwest theme for the most part.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Our next question here is, I'm curious about how or if the hexagonal pillars have changed. I don't know if I missed them, but I didn't see them in any of the new screenshots.
Yeah, the hexes are still around. They're one of our early decisions around the game of having kind of this underlying structure. I think I mentioned this in the blog, this underlying structure on the ring itself. And again, this has allowed us to go in this path of having massive destruction on the ring without it becoming really noodly and noisy and complex. And we have these organized hexes that have been shifted up and down and kind of torn apart, and some of them are missing, creating these big gaps between spaces. And so they're still in the game. They're still foundational, kind of literally underlying on the surface of the game and the world that we're creating. We've continued to kind of work on their rendering. That was one of the things that's always bothered us in the past, was just how they looked on screen. And so we've made a lot more investment into their shaders and how they render and how they're grouped and things like that. But again, they lend so well to both just the narrative of the destruction of the ring and then also gameplay. Like a hexagon is a really, really convenient shape for gameplay to kind of live on and play around for cover and for, using the grapple and getting up on these shelves of hexes. So yeah, they're still around in the same kind of fashion that they were last year, but they're looking a lot better right now.
That's great to hear. I'm sure the person who asked that's going to be very, very happy to hear that as well. You touched on it some in the blog, but how will missions and other objectives be separated from each other in a more connected world? What is stopping me from grabbing a Banshee and flying it to an objective 3 missions ahead in the story?
In a way, the answer is do it. Go do it. The way that the game is structured and the way that the primary narrative moves through the game, there's certain things that just naturally, by the structure of the game, sort of, you don't have the opportunity to jump ahead and sort of sequence break and break the experience. The game embraces this to a degree. But on top of that, once again, going back to sort of the player agency aspect of that, the way it's going to play out is you might be dropped off in a location from the Pelican, and there's your primary objective. You can see over the ridge that there's a location that you're going to be heading to. But then off to the left, there's a UNSC forward operating base that's now been overrun by Banished. Oh, do I go down there before I go to the main story beat, and take that back, and then maybe I can pull in the vehicle to go use. I could gather up different, my loadout, change out my loadout to what I want to do from the things that I've unlocked. I look over to the right, and oh man, there's some green smoke popped that's coming over that ridge over there. That's probably a group of Marines that are heavily battling for their lives against Banished forces right now. I can go choose to rescue those guys. That would be something to do. And then over there's a big Forerunner tower sticking up over that ridge across the gap. Maybe I want to go explore that and go see what's going on there. So there's a lot of choice that you get to make about kind of how you want to engage in things and what you want to go do and what stories you want to go pursue at any given time. But then there's always sort of the anchor element of the core story that's playing through, that is ever present and kind of drawing you through the spaces and through the world as it unfolds in front of you.
Gotcha. So a player can't really cut ahead on the main Golden Path storyline. But they can still go around and adventure and explore and find all these other cool things.
Absolutely, and we've managed to craft that in such a way that it's not done through the concept of like invisible walls and just you just can't do it yet kind of stuff. It's we've crafted the story in such a way that it's very natural in the flow of how the spaces work and how everything's flowing, so it doesn't feel artificial, which I think is important when you're having this kind of a experience that we want to have be this flowing, organic kind of feeling experience.
There's roads connecting these different mission locations, and you can grab a vehicle and you can drive from one location to the other, which is awesome. You can drive that at your own pace. Now, Master Chief's story, the main story of the game, does have a linear thread that takes us through the world. And as you're progressing through the story, you're going to unlock, new areas to explore, new locations to go inside, and that story will progress in a linear fashion. In between, as you're driving out and about, there are many other activities out in the world for you to engage in, and like the bases or outposts is one of those things that I had mentioned. And there you can, if you've progressed the game and you've unlocked, maybe some of these higher tier vehicles, could be the Scorpion, it could be a flying vehicle. You're absolutely free to take that vehicle to any place you want to go in the game, and you can use it to attack a base, or you could go in on foot. If you've rescued some Marines along the way, you could go in there and take some Marines with you. The choice is yours. It's awesome.
Yeah, so you could play any way you want, but you still kind of have to follow that chief storyline, and there's no cuts, no skipping ahead.
Right, exactly.
Okay. This next question is, with Zeta Halo being a major character, will there be ways to find story elements within the world beyond the Golden Path?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, the locations are connected in the world. You can drive from one location to the other. And along the way, you're going to discover, cool elements in the world. You'll see a pelican that's crashed and skidded across the terrain, and it's, burnt out an area. Well, you can go over and discover, explore that space. And some of these spaces, you're going to find things like audio logs. And those audio logs are going to be telling a lot more story about the ring, about what happened, about the battles that took place here, or people's personal stories. So it's really exciting to go around and explore some of these locations. And I'll also say, like, the art team has done an amazing job of just set dressing these areas so you can look at a space and you can really see what goes on. And then when you listen to that audio log, it just complements that story and just really makes the world a much deeper, richer space for exploring that. It's really cool.
So they paint the picture and then you kind of get to hear more about it, essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the audio logs are great. There's great voice acting and background sounds. It's like a cool radio drama. They're awesome. They're really well done.
All right, I'm going to toss us to our next question here. Is the ring in the skybox a fully rendered 3D model? If so, why did you decide to make it a 3D model instead of just painting a skybox? It looks beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, great question. We chose to go with a 3D model mostly because the ring, again, in the blog, we described the ring as a character. Being a character, we want it to have attributes that the player can, they're not going to slap you in the face, but they're subtle, right? So you think of a 3D model in the sky, and as you move across the world, you're going to see it from different angles, right? Even though it's the same thing each time. And so we were able to kind of give different attributes to it in a 3D model versus if it were just a 2D in the sky painting, you don't really get that parallaxing play of shapes and kind of details. And so making it a 3D model allows us to do that. It also allows us to bridge the gap of when you're on the gameplay space island and you're looking off across the world, you can kind of see where it connects back to the ring and then goes up into the sky. And like that I'll call it that 3D-ness is really compelling and it's really awesome. And then it plays really well with our day-night cycle. So you see the day-night cycle, the star, the light source sun, rises, and you can see the shadows on the ring kind of change because it's a 3D model and it's actually casting shadow. So it just allows us for some really cool stuff. The other really neat feature there is at a certain time in the day, the cycle rather, there's an eclipse, and so the ring actually eclipses the sun, and you get this like midnight feel. It's pretty brief, but it's really neat kind of moment while you're playing. And so having a 3D model allows us to do kind of really interesting things like that. That's exciting to me.
And all of that is because you went with that 3D model instead of the painting?
Yeah. That just allowed us to do a bunch of that stuff that I was rambling through there.
Awesome. That actually brings me to my next question. How will the day-night cycles work with cutscenes? Will they also be integrated into them, or will they always be in a predetermined time?
This is a good one. This is awesome. I'm glad somebody asked this because it'll be a great point of clarification. In Halo Infinite, we don't do what might be considered traditional cutscenes so much because there's not like pre-rendered things. Everything's done live in the engine. And we really focused on the idea of like doing smooth transitions. So Chief will move into a particular interaction, and the camera kind of pulls from the head and transitions into the scene, but everything is playing out right in the space. So whatever time of day it is, it's going to be that. Whatever weapons you have in your hands, those are the ones in the cutscene. And then it'll transition back out and continue on playing. We're really looking to try to present that sort of seamless experience as you're going through. So we didn't have that sort of game cutscene, back to game cutscene kind of experience. We wanted it to flow and just have the story just play out as the experience of the player. So there won't really be any differentiation. It'll be live, happening in engine whenever it happens.
That is great to hear. Just a very smooth flow from cutscenes to gameplay and back and forth.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right, gonna keep us jumping on over to our next question. What techniques does the team implement to really bring out the scale of the world of Zeta Halo? Emphasis on certain elements, etc., etc.
That is a great question. One of the challenges we have with making a world that is both alien and ginormous, like the ring, that's my science word, is that scale can get really tricky, right? Because you want to build this giant ring that that implies all this other space that you can literally see, wrapping up around you. You have these large or huge forerunner structures all over. And so how do you make it so that you as a player don't feel like a little kid in this space? You want to feel like a super soldier, right? You don't want to feel like a small person running around this big space. But those features are so important. Those giant features are so important to kind of the epic scale of a gameplay space. So one of the challenges we have, and one of the reasons why, again, we lean on any biome that we create in a game, is it brings back scale to the player, right? And so you look at grass or you look at trees, people can use those to judge scale against a giant forerunner structure. If you see that structure alone without anything around it, it's really hard to tell what the scale of that thing is. So you need things to be able to compare it to within the same kind of shot. And that's where it gets really fun, kind of blending all the different palettes, I'll call them, together in order to get those varying degrees of scale across the game. And so, you saw in some of our screenshots, there's these big mega structures in the world, and you'll see next to them, there are trees. And these trees are not small, because as people, we know a pine tree is, say, 20 to 30 feet tall. It's like a random guess, right? Because we can relate to those things in the real world. And then seeing those together, your brain can put it together. Oh my gosh, this thing must be a mile high or something, whatever you might come up with. And so scale is a really tricky thing to pull off well. But it really comes down to mixing the different relatable things with like the big science awesome or sci-fi awesome things in the world, like the megastructures. The hexagons even lend themselves to having scale. They're kind of more of a medium scale, but they create these big swaths of forerunner tech that you see in the world. And so you see those compared to like the rocks on top of them, to the trees on top of those, and you start really getting a good sense of what the scale is of spaces and the distances of things too. And it's a really fun challenge for the team to kind of overcome. And when you do it well, people won't really realize that that was an issue ever. But yeah, it's kind of an exciting topic for us to always tackle with making a really awesome sci-fi game.
That's an incredible explanation. It's all just a matter of perspective and making sure people can relate these different sizes against each other.
Yeah, so it's not so alien that, you can't relate to it, but it's also, epic and awesome and, visually interesting, sci-fi opera type stuff.
That is an awesome explanation. Thank you for diving into that. I'm sure that person is very happy with that answer too.
Hope so.
I'm going to jump on over to our next question and keep us moving here. What's the design philosophy for the Banished in Halo Infinite? What colors, styles, and goals go into banishing a hallway, weapon, vehicle, or structure?
Yeah, really good question. Well, Banished were first established, the visuals for them first established in Halo Wars 2, and so we've really taken that and kind of applied it to the narrative of this game. And so the Banished have this really heavy metal, red war paint kind of aesthetic to them. They're literally led by a brute, so they have this, brutish kind of vibe, and so you'll see this in the way we built kind of their structures and their fortifications, in that they all have these big spikes under them. And so what's happened is the Banished have dropped them from orbit and they've slammed into the ground, and they built these fortifications across the ring in this very kind of not medieval, but very very heavy way, right? And so it has this really awesome contrast versus like this beautiful world, Pacific Northwest world that we built, where you see these beautiful trees and these things, and then you just have these big heavy buildings having slammed down on the ground around them, crushing everything below them to kind of set up their fortifications, the Banished. So it's a great way for us to contrast against things, and you can even see that in some of the vehicle and weapon, new designs of classic weapons and some of the new weapons. In that, you look at the Wraith or you look at the Banshee, and now those things, they have this heavy metal plated armor on top of them with the red war paint of the Banished. So you can really feel like this faction has come and kind of affected the ring visually. Both with like their equipment, their vehicles, weapons, and then also their buildings, and just the fact that they don't care about the beauty of the ring. They just want to conquer things. And so even within some of our Forerunner structures, you can see their kind of influence of what they're trying to do with the Forerunner technologies, and how they're applying their way on top of those things. So it's really exciting for us aesthetically and visually for the art team to kind of tackle these things and really get that contrast in there so players can see the story of what's happening and what they're up to.
Great explanation there. I don't think I've met anyone who doesn't like the Banished color scheme and just overall art style. So I'm looking forward to letting people dive in, explore the ring, and see all that Banished influence.
I'm really excited for people to go and get to explore all that stuff, because we put a lot of cool details in there that I think people will appreciate if they look around.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that one. Let's dive into our next one. In Halo Infinite, will we be able to knock things off the edge of Zeta Halo? Asking for a friend.
The answer is yes. And I can tell you, just recently I was playing in space, and I happened to be driving in with a Scorpion tank, and I came around the corner and I was face to face with a Wraith, and just out of pure luck, pure coincidence, I managed to push the Wraith over the edge, and just watched it, slowly tilt back and just fall into the abyss, which was amazing, unexpected, and it was just such a cool moment that happened that, that just by luck that I managed to come around a different way and catch them off guard. So absolutely, you can push things off the edge. It's going to be difficult, but if you manage to time it just right, you're gonna see it.
I hope you have that recorded, because I want to take a look, and I'm sure everyone else wants to take a look at that too, because it sounds very unique, right? That's never been a thing in a Halo game before. So very, very exciting. Our next question from the community is, how much of the improvements to visual quality do you attribute as a response to the July reveal versus just having more time to improve and tweak the game?
Yeah, that's a really great question. First off, thank you to the community for having giving us their thoughts and on what they saw last year. We really appreciate that, and that's something we have that not every franchise gets to have, is that immediate feedback on how people are feeling about it. A lot of what was brought up from the community based on that gameplay reveal last year was a lot of stuff we had on our list of like, hey, we need to improve these things. We are so grateful we now have more time to do that, and you can, hopefully everybody can tell in the screenshots we just released, we really took that feedback and just that list of things that we knew we were going after or wanted to go after to heart. And the team has worked incredibly hard. I can't state that enough on getting those features and those issues resolved as best as we can for the sake of the player, right? That's always what this is about. And so hopefully you can see the results of that effort. But again, thank you to the community for pointing out things that, you know, we completely agree with. And we were able, again, with our extra time here, we're able to actually go after and fix. And I think it's going to lead to something really awesome when you get to play it later this year.
I've always said it's going to be a beautiful game. I've always had that faith, and it's definitely been coming along quite nicely. So thank you for answering that one. Our next question here: will all the events in the game be created in advance, like outposts and missions, or will there be random encounters like unscripted patrols that will look for Chief?
Gotcha. Yeah. So when the Banished arrived on Zeta Halo and established their presence, they set up outposts and bases and these kinds of things as like permanent structures that they're entrenched upon within. But then there's also these patrols that are out in the in-between spaces and random encounters that the player will run into as you're exploring and going between locations. There's, on top of that, something that's pretty cool is we have a system in place to react to some of the choices the player makes. So for instance, if you're moving through a space and you're on foot, we will understand that, and the random encounters you might run into are encounters that would be fun to engage in on foot. And if you're like coming into a space and you've got a flying vehicle, for instance, and you're just cruising through, you might run into an encounter that's fun to fight against in a flying vehicle. I want to emphasize that the goal there is to make it so that we're giving you things that are fun to engage with whatever you're bringing to bear, the choices you've made. It's not sort of a reaction pushback, you know, oh, the player's in a flying vehicle, let's punish them. It's not really that. It's the idea of like, what is really fun to do with this kind of a choice that the player's made, and we make sure that we're providing those kinds of opportunities so that it feels really cool and feels rewarding for the choices you've made. That's awesome.
I actually am very excited to see our players go hands-on and see these different experiences. Could you actually expand on that? We've got some time here. Could you expand on what that means for players?
Yeah, absolutely. So for instance, like in previous Halo games, you'll get more of a linear experience where things are crafted specifically for that experience. So if you're going to have an experience where this is where the player gets a hold of a wasp, let's make a really cool, you know, what would be fun to do in a wasp? You know, if I'm coming in with a scorpion, what would be cool to do in a scorpion? And in our game, things are a little bit in Infinite. It's more open-ended than that, and so we want to still be able to present those opportunities where if a player perchance comes into this encounter with a scorpion, we want to have cool, fun things that you would do when you're in a scorpion. You know, we want to make sure that you have those elements and that we have that kind of a play experience. If I come into this space perchance in a wasp, we want to make sure that there's what would be fun to do in a wasp is presented to you. So it's trying to preserve all that really fun kind of crafted thematic gameplay elements that you would get in a more linear experience and applying it to this more open-ended approach and ensuring we still have those fun opportunities.
So it adapts to just keep things fun and interesting no matter how you play the game.
Yeah. The game is, so much of this game is anchored in the idea of player agency and choice. Play it the way you want to do it, figure out what you want to do, and the game will support reacting to those choices and presenting you with fun opportunities. So it's pretty cool.
That does sound pretty darn cool. All right, this one's a little more lighthearted. It says, "Are you guys having fun making the game?"
Just to level set, making games is not. At times it's difficult for sure. I mean, especially a game like this, there's all sorts of philosophical things you need to challenge both internally and also externally with fans. And for me, I'm super grateful just to be able to work on a game like Halo, to have a bunch of fans that love the game. And there's challenges with that. But to answer your question succinctly, like, hell yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. Like, this is Halo Infinite. This is a big deal. And the team that I'm working with, we love working on this game. And we put all of our passion and blood and sweat and tears into this game. And at times, yeah, it's been difficult, but that's not me complaining. We love this. Like, this is an awesome place and an awesome game to be working on. And we are so excited to be able to get this thing out for everyone else to be checking it out.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I'm having fun making the game, helping out and learning as much as I can. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are also having fun over there on the Sandbox team. It was awesome to have you back here today. Before we let you go, though, do you have any closing words that you'd like to impart with the community?
I'd just like to say thanks again for having me here, John. Appreciate all the work that you do, and I'll always come back on the show or talk to you at any time. So that's not a problem. But for the community, thanks for being along with this ride. And I hope to be talking and interfacing with all of you as much as I can and as much as we can at 343 for the upcoming months as we get this baby out the door.
I know all of us here are eternally grateful for and humbled by your continued interest and following of Master Chief and his adventures and the things that we're putting together to explore together. That's great, and the questions you've posed today, just reinforce that, that there's interest in what we're doing and you want to know more. And I can't wait until you guys get this in your hands and, get a chance to experience it. And I'm really looking forward to the different stories that you experience and share, YouTube and, online and that kind of thing. So yeah, just a big thank you. And maybe I'll see you in co-op.
Thank you for being the community, right? It's something that Halo has, and we appreciate the passion that goes behind, you taking the time and investing in our success and hopefully the experience you get to play later this year. And it's really awesome and humbling to see the responses we get when we are able to share stuff with you. So I'm really excited about being able to share more with the community as we go and kind of changing that culture of developer and community that we're able to do now. And just a huge thank you. And also a thank you to the team for working so hard. It's just an immense amount of time goes into making these games. So being able to see a positive reaction from the community really makes our work feel good. Yeah.
John, thank you very much for having me here today. And, I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity to speak, directly to the community and share some of our, passion for making this game. Like we all love this game. We all grew up with this game. I feel very fortunate to be a part of it and to bring the community in along with it as well. So yeah, thank you, the community, very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much for the time today, gentlemen. I appreciate it, and I know the community does as well. For everyone watching, if you want to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Halo news, be sure to follow @Halo on Twitter and check our news section on HaloWaypoint.com. Until next time, I'll see you all later.